Hello, and welcome to another TipHaus Insider Webinar. I am your host, Kurt Grogan, and today, very excited as we will be covering multi-unit tip payroll. So we're going to make sure that we have all of the bells and whistles. Y'all are all aware of what we have available for you to make sure that you're audit ready and just operationally ready. We want to make sure you can build a bulletproof digital paper trail for every location. If you track the news lately, it is no secret that there are a lot of lawyers out there who are chasing after some of these restaurant groups. And one of the major benefits, of course, of working with TipHaus is making sure that you are buttoned up and you have an audit trail ready to go. You can hand off to your legal team as needed. You can be prepared for anything. Most importantly, though, along the way, of course, is we're going to be giving you transparency and ensuring that you are able to leverage that as you go through this entire piece. So today, as I mentioned, my name is Kurt Grogan. I'm the COO and co-founder over here at TipHaus, and I'm looking forward to walking through this with you. Before we dive too deep in, however, if this is your first time attending a webinar here with TipHaus, I do want to make sure that you are aware we do have live chats and Q&A. You do not have to wait to the end to ask these questions. You can ask them as we go along, and I will tackle them as our hit our Q&A session towards the end. Next, the restaurant industry has a chaotically busy lifestyle. So whether you're dealing with fires, literally or metaphorically, feel free to jump and handle those as needed. This is being recorded. We will share this immediately after the webinar to everyone. We do have resources as well that come through this. So in addition to some QR codes that you can scan and all the information you'll be given here, this will be shared afterwards. Similarly, there will be an email with some additional resources for you as well. Anything that you want to dive deeper in or ask questions, feel free to. And last but not least, as our thank you to everyone for keeping up with the education in the industry, we do give away a $50 Starbucks gift card at random. There is the opportunity, everyone just by attending will automatically get one entry. Asking questions get you additional entry, so please feel free to use that Q&A box. And without further ado, let's dive into a little bit of what we plan on covering here. So, the hidden pain of tip reporting at scale, this is something we talk about a lot in depth, but as operators grow beyond just 1, 2, 3 locations, tip reporting becomes increasingly difficult to manage. If you are a multi-unit operator, and I see several of you all are on this call here today, this should be no secret to you. The complexity, and as it grows, compliance, legal issues become significantly more difficult. Typically you are going to be able to be less hands-on with each location. You're trusting management, you're training, everything of that nature to make sure that it gets done correctly. So I want to highlight a couple of areas where we really see some of these traps that people fall into. And that's, if you're having to do manual exports across multiple locations, if there's inconsistent processes at location levels, if you don't have that training dialed in, if you've got new managers or general managers, if you're a group that makes acquisitions or franchisees, this is typically where we see those come into play. Of course, reconciliation issues, one of the greatest issues on payroll side, particularly when you're trying to implement something of paying employees cash daily, right? You want to make sure that you can get those employees their tips. That is great. However, it can be very difficult to keep a proper paper trail and know exactly what's going on. Typically, we see restaurants that end up just having a slush fund where, hey, maybe $1,000 a month extra is just kind of unaccounted for by overages or underpaying, and you have to make up for it. Of course, payroll delays, nothing makes people happier than that. So we want to make sure that we don't have so much manual cleanup that we actually are delayed in getting our payroll across. And then, of course, the biggest one, lack of a clean digital paper trail. When we're handling things across multiple systems, when we're paying cash, when we're doing these items, it is very hard to keep one cohesive report of exactly where the money's going, who was authorizing it, who made these decisions, and if there were any corrections, reconciliations, what actually occurred. So obviously, we work with groups big and small individual coffee shops we've seen all the way up to some of the largest enterprise groups in the United States. And as anyone will tell you, the friction multiplies as this business scales. This is something that you want to get off your plate. Tips are not something that should be a complicated mess that you're dealing with forever. You want to worry about your new locations, how you're expanding, how to drive revenue, additional revenue per guest, things of these nature. You don't want to have to worry about tips and the bare bones minimum of it. So when we're diving into this, obviously, when you create a tip policy, say, we're tip sharing from servers to the bartenders, maybe to support staff. We're going to do some tip pooling. We're doing things on that nature. Once you create that tip policy, that is not the end of your work, of course. The reporting how you make sure that transparency gets back to those employees, of course, making sure that they don't have additional questions and that they feel everyone is being treated honestly and fairly. The cleanup of it. Oh, so-and-so forgot to clock in. They clocked in as a bartender because they usually are. However, they picked up a serving shift. All of these items that continually come through, we want to make sure we can tackle. Reconciliation is going to be one of the biggest pieces when you're paying that money. What happens when a shift was missed? What happens when someone forgot to clock out? They took more of that tip pool than they were intended to. And when you go through and update that on your point of sale, how does that impact the downstream effects? And your payroll preparation, of course. How do we make sure that we're able to get these things across to payroll quickly, efficiently, and that payroll is able to understand it and you have all the information to answer any questions or issues that arise? So with that, what does payroll-ready tip reporting actually look like? Realistically, it's clean, consistent data across all locations, first and foremost. We want to make sure that that is the number one piece, that we're comparing apples to apples. Many of our large groups, and many of you on the call, I'm sure today, have somewhat fragmented tech systems, right? Maybe you even run multiple point of sales. You're trying to get it all into one cohesive system, but long rollout process, long negotiating, or you're migrating away from one point of sale to another and you're in the process of it. So over the next 12 months, you're going to be managing multiple systems. You want to make sure that's all being brought into one clean, coherent system that you can manage. You don't want to be making a ton of manual adjustments before payroll, of course. Some are always going to be inevitable as we're dealing with humans. There's always going to be adjustments, so you need a system that can do it quickly and cleanly, but you want to make sure that you're minimizing it by automating as much as possible. You want to make sure you have exports tailored to your payroll workflows. And so this is something I'd encourage, I find still every now and then a TipHaus customer isn't aware that we can work with you on custom exports. So send us an example of your file of what you're working with in whatever payroll system you use or multiple payroll systems. And we can export and create custom exports for these exact payrolls. So makes your life much, much easier to handle, making sure the columns and headers match up, the titles match up, so it's simple imports into whatever system you need. You want visibility for operations, finance, and payroll teams, but you don't always want action enabled by these individuals, right? You want to limit the views to just what's relevant to them, make sure they can't accidentally mess anything up. And then, of course, that confidence that the reporting is accurate and audit ready. These are all kind of table stakes for what it really takes to make a tip system and a tip management platform enabled, powered, working right for your payroll systems and your payroll teams. Defining payroll ready, we just covered largely, but it's making sure that you have clean data, that you have a trusted system, and most importantly, that it's easy to use. If there's ever an event that you need to edit, anything to adjust, or even just during that setup process. Number of times I have seen too many groups, whether it's a manual piece or they're using a less than reputable vendor, but they actually set it up incorrectly to start with, and they did not find that out until maybe even the year's end when things didn't really quite match on the books as they're going through it. We want to make sure we avoid that. Where teams are going to lose the most time, and this is what I really want to focus on, one of our big drives, of course, is always to ensure managers, operators, owners are spending more time on the restaurant, more time on the business, more time out with the employees, training, more time with the guests, delivering value and taking feedback. And as much as possible, getting out of that back office, having to deal with spreadsheets, having to make sure that you're doing things that really aren't driving your business forward. They're just keeping the lights on. This is where, of course, TipHaus is happy to step in and automate that entire piece for you. But the number one piece that I typically see is chasing missing data. We have a system that automates 75% of it, but we have to manually bring in these items and stack it up. We have to type those in. They're prone to errors. They're prone sometimes to fraud. Unspoken, but really frustrating part about this industry at times is fraud does and can occur, especially when dealing with massive volumes of cash. Validating and making sure that these totals are accurate manually, going through and having to calculate those, again, difficult time to do. Reconciling those location by location inconsistencies, even if you are not using different systems, particularly groups that may have different concepts or they have shrunk down concepts, so the menu items are different, the sales totals are different. You want to make sure you can see apples to apples across that whole table. Managing spreadsheets and disconnected systems I've covered. No one likes that. We don't want to ever get into that piece. And then, of course, repeated back and forth between individual team members where operations is saying, hey, I need this over by this time. Payroll needs a file to be delivered with notes and understandings of exactly what changes were made. And then finance trying to get that money actually out the door. So it can be a really, really challenging process between these three back of house teams to make sure that you have everything buttoned up. That's why we look for systems that can compile all of these. And What is the actual cost? The biggest cost, it's really not obvious often. It's these 5, 10, 15 minutes from your team members that are just constantly being dragged away. And these add up. The context switching really, really hurts your team. You want to be able to keep people focused on their task. But it's that admin time, that operational drag behind the scenes where I'd encourage you, really go chat with your team and see how much time they're actually taking having to get some of these things done. It is more often than you will always think. We interview managers, we chat down with our team members, we chat with our operators and our customers. You would be shocked at them saying, oh, well, I didn't even realize so-and-so was spending, 30 minutes a week just double checking something or helping out payroll by adjusting these items. And they've been doing it for so long, we just never even considered calculating that time in. Or even down to the employee level. Even if they're just spending 2 to 3 minutes a shift, 5 minutes a shift, getting things going. Across 20, 30 employees, 7 days a week, really starts to add up. You want to make sure you can get those employees off the clock if they're not delivering value by performing their role or their stated role, let's say. You want to make sure your other team members can focus on what they have. You really want to drive your team to make sure that tips should be an automated piece. And of course, that is where a tip management platform will come in for you. So how does TipHaus simplify this process? Many of you I see here today are fortunate enough, customers are in trial with us right now. So hopefully you've already seen a lot of these value adds, but the number one piece is we're trying to centralize all of the reporting across these locations. We're making sure you have one single cohesive view, one single point of truth. We don't want you to be in a situation where you have 3 systems with similar but not perfectly accurate data, and you're trying to guess, okay, well, which one is our point of view? Which one are we actually adopting? Making sure all teams are using the same purpose. Standardizing reports and exports and reporting workflows, of course. Supporting reconciliation, cleaner, more reliable data. It's so critical that your system will reconcile automatically, not just for the daily payouts. That's the number one piece, because obviously that's money moving that you need to actually reconcile. But it's including things like if your tip management platform is just Microsoft Excel, the most popular one out there, right, for restaurants for the last 20, 30 years. How are you making sure that when a clock out gets adjusted from 2 days ago, who is going in and updating those tips, right? How are you making sure that, so-and-so got overpaid by 5, so-and-so got shorted by 5. How do we make sure that's right? And you're not setting yourself up for any legal liabilities down the road. We really want to address all of these items and making sure that you've got it right. Of course, reducing manual workload for the payroll and finance teams goes without saying that, when we can automate these things, it makes it much simpler for them, and creating a stronger digital paper trail for compliance and accuracy. Always, we preach visibility, transparency. And so if you are not aware, I'm not going to showcase it today. We'll keep this on multi-units and some of our new functions and feature sets that you may not be aware of, but there is an employee app. I cannot stress enough how important it is to let your employees know and encourage them to be able to utilize this. The feedback we get from customers are unbelievable that, my employees finally trust what we're doing. We see 30% reductions in turnovers, which I don't have to state how critical that is in today's environment. Hospitality industry always has tenure at top of mind, and how do we keep our employees longer? Easiest way is to make sure that they know that they're receiving their fair amount of tips, that they are always going to be able to see it. They can track how much they're earning and how much tip share, tip pool is going on. You want to make sure they have that. Obviously, we give the visibility to the entire organization. Your teams get it. That's great. But don't forget those employees. You want to have those dialogues and conversations. So biggest piece here, is we are not here to just help you calculate your tips. We're here to make sure that any of these multi-unit restaurant teams operationalize their tip reporting in a way that scales with them. You should not have to rethink your tip management platform due to the success of your business. We want you to know that we can cover you and we have you moving. So built to make payroll faster. What does that mean? So we've got some new updates designed to reduce the manual work and catch issues before they slow you down. So simplified payroll workflows, combined exports across multiple organizations, a feature many of our enterprise groups were super excited about and have asked. So we consulted and sat down with them, which we now can combine exports across all of these organizations, simplifying it. You don't have to do multiple exports, even when you run multiple concepts, multiple states, or even on an enterprise level where you'd have managers running certain regions and you want to be able to roll that all up to one payroll as opposed to having each regional group handle their concepts underneath them. We did also roll out our Paylocity integration. So major shout out to the Paylocity team for working with us on that. We've got quite a few hundreds of customers that are working with them. So simpler if you're using Paylocity now. Very excited to bring that out. And of course, some issues that we flagged before payroll happened, some things we wanted to resolve, make these operators' lives even easier. So additional payout warnings exist now to flag issues early. We've updated, the total number of flags we can bring in and recommended solutions or how we might be able to solve it. And even split distributions. This is an unbelievably common requested feature for a few different organizations that look at their tip policies and say, hey, we want to make sure that this job code, this role, whether it's hostess, servers, whatever it may be, no matter the minutes they work, no matter what they're doing that day, that they're earning the even amount of tips, so that we encourage everyone to come into work at all times, right? It's not that you're going to have a worse shift or a better shift with it. We wanted to make sure that we simplify that and keep it fair across the board. So that's a great piece to look at as we go through. And with that, I want to drive into some more visibility across every location. So there is now centralized control. We had this previously for multiple units. However, our enterprise groups that may have 10, 12, 15 concepts that they manage underneath it, we're looking for one centralized dashboard. So very excited to bring that into effect, where you can manage everything across all of your brands, all of your restaurants, all of your concepts, whatever you may have in one location for you, as opposed to having this set up 3 or 4 times. Smarter reporting, I'm excited to showcase this today. We have rebuilt our sales table, custom views, filters, flexibility, taking feedback from the market and exactly how it's being utilized today. And as always, things going on with AI are great. However, they continue to highlight vulnerabilities in other organizations. So we have continued to roll out stronger security internally and externally for our users. And 2FA is available for both operators and employees. The amount of money moving through these systems, moving through your restaurants, moving through your concepts deserves a little extra protection. So we have taken quite a bit of time and gone through and gotten that set up for you. But without further ado, I would love to showcase a few of these features and walk us through kind of what we have going on. So I will switch my tab here just briefly. And we should all be looking at our new home screen piece. Okay, so from here, and one of the things that we are most excited about with it, this should look familiar to you all. Really what we're able to do, home screen, all the KPIs you want, and none of the ones that you don't. If they don't matter to you, you can simply exit it out. But I do encourage users to always go through, and just a great way to get a holistic view. Hey, what is going on? What if we wanted to see exactly by individual store, like tip revenue by store? We wanted to measure it across. Well, great. Now we have this and we can track and see what's going on at a glance. This is great to just take a quick peek and say, are there any issues? Does anything look abnormal? Do I need to dive in any deeper? No, everything looks great. Perfect. Then we can carry right along. 3 pieces that I really, really want to highlight to you today. And first and foremost, our reporting page. So this is now rolled out to all users. We were running it through a beta for quite a while, so many of you had early access to this if you requested it. If you've attended some of our webinars previously, you may have seen some pieces about it and reached out. But the biggest piece here is we heard loud and clear, more flexibility. We want to be able to search by check numbers. We want to be able to search by revenue centers. We want to be able to filter as many things as we want. We want this to have everything we need and nothing we don't. So we got to work, and we are very excited to roll this out to everyone. So the biggest piece, obviously we can handle all of the views that you want. We see check number searches regularly. Hey, we need to understand this. We got a question about this check, or, I'm not sure why this occurred. Great, easy, quick access to it now. But the number one piece is, let's go ahead and create a new configuration, right? So we can actually see what we want to do here, and we can set things up by view. So I can create a view for this sales export that is strictly to me. Hey, no one else in the organization needs this. This is just my report. Or I can set it up by admin level. So, hey, I want all of my GMs to have access to this. This is something that maybe is ready for getting them payroll. This may be something that I think, it's their Monday responsibility to log in and review this and make sure everything looks good, make any corrections, see if their employees clocked in and out correctly, etc. Similarly, you can set it to org admin. So only the top level users across the entire organization can see this. And this may be that same piece. We're using it for reporting. We're trying to make some tactical decisions on how we want to structure our business. All of these are great, but for now, I will just set it as my view. Then with it, what matters to you? We want to see check numbers. I want to see the checks. I want to see and understand the distributions that occurred, the revenue center it happened at. and I want to understand the total of the tips that came through. So if I were to create that, now we have our view available. And so you'll see that we can see it right here. Everything that we want, nothing that we don't. We limited it down very, very tight, which is excellent. We've got a whole piece available for you to work with however you need it to work, which is great. Always want to make sure we can handle things like that. Always worth mentioning, of course, we can pin these views so that everyone has access to them. Going to be a great new tool, but if you are familiar with our previous reporting page, had a lot of information that was great. Sometimes it wasn't the relevant information needed for these individuals. So very excited to roll this out and get this into the hands of all of our users. Please, as many of you know, there is always a live chat in the bottom right. This is a demo account, so I won't spam my own customer success team. But if you ever have questions or you want to learn more about this, please feel free to reach out to them. They are happy to show off this feature. A wonderful, beloved piece that we've really got rolling on here. So additionally to that, we've made some adjustments to the breakdown page, and there are additional ones coming. But some of the beauties here that we have with it is the ability to now export by grouping across locations, grouping locations and dates. This really helps that payroll piece. So if, again, you were a customer who's been with us for years and you have not tinkered around with this, or if this is something you saw and tried to decide if it was right for you at the time or as you're scaling and growing, you now have multiple new sections available to you for exports. We want to save those payroll teams. We want to make sure your managers are not spending time having to roll up exports, send it up to a finance team, anything of that nature. So you now have all of this available to you by default. Of course, if you use TipHaus, you're well aware that all of these features are not gated. We don't use different pricing plans or anything of that nature. We think all of the amazing pieces should be available to you by default, and here they are. So however your system and your operations work, we have a solution for you across the board, trying to save you time, particularly if you're a group that is trying to scale, trying to do new things, trying to test things out. It is a wonderful place to be. Last but certainly not least, I do want to show off briefly. So in our organizational settings now, you'll notice you can actually manage things across the org. And if you're an enterprise customer, you will notice that there is an enterprise option above as well. So you can set it across all of the organizations that fall under your unique enterprise. But this way we can manage employees, we can adjust items, we can handle settings all from one. Instead of diving into either locations or even just the org itself, you can manage it across the entire enterprise. A great new feature here for you, making sure, again, just saving you time, making sure your team has the visibility that they want, they can handle the items that they need, trying to ensure that we always have these items available for you. But you'll see here now, everything shows up across different locations for you, so you can take quick action as fast as possible and get ready to rock and roll with it. And very, very excited to showcase. If you are not familiar with TipHaus, I would be remiss to not show you briefly what we do, and I'll walk you through that right now. But the end element, of course, fully automated tip management platform. Simply create rules as you need. Our tip policy here might be, we want to make sure that we can tip from servers to bars. You see, we already have these in effect across our 3 locations. If I were to drive into one, you can see exactly what we are seeing here, how much just beer, liquor, and wine is being removed from our servers, moving to our bartenders. We can see that we're doing it across, and we can always adjust these categories as needed. We can manage our frequency. Number one piece that we always get asked, of course, is which one is best. Depends on your organization and how you want to run it, but daily is always going to be what you think of for your organization. Our most popular is time of sale, a proprietary tip out method that only rewards the individuals that are working during the sale itself. And so you have all of these options available to you. Again, when we look at making sure that you are ready for multi-units, typically we see that these individual organizations and these groups, they have different needs at different locations. Even under the same concepts, you may want to ensure that how your Texas locations are different than your Florida locations, and you have different needs than your Pennsylvania or Northeast locations. So you can set all of these up easily, quickly, and manage them accordingly. And of course, we're collecting this from our servers, distributing to our bartenders. Everything's looking great. We get our summary and we submit. So a lot of fun pieces, so much more to TipHaus that I won't dive into, as many of you are already aware of our base functionality, but I did want to at least showcase, what full comprehensive tip management suite looks like. We are, of course, pulling all of this data in from your point of sale and your time and attendance platform, bringing everything in, cutting down onboarding time and management time, letting you focus on what's more important to the business. And also with that team, I do want to make sure give you a massive thank you. And if you are not already using TipHaus, if it's something you've looked at, or if this is your first time ever hearing about a complete tip management suite and what it can do for your business, please go ahead and scan this QR code. We extend our free trial that you get with TipHaus from 2 weeks to a month if you come in from one of these webinars. So scan this QR code, give us a trial for 30 days, see if it makes sense for your business. I almost guarantee you it will. And so we'd love to see and show you what we can do, how we can save you time and money, how we can reduce turnover, and most importantly, how we can give you peace of mind. We want to make sure you're payroll ready. We want to make sure you have these audit trails available to you, that every dollar coming into your business and going out to these employees is tracked. You can always export these from TipHaus. We have a number of customers who a lawyer got antsy and wanted to pursue something, chatted with a few of the employees. They simply sent over the audit logs from TipHaus, and it kind of kills the lawsuit in its tracks. As many of you know, or hopefully don't know, I should say, even winning lawsuits is very expensive. So the easiest way you can snuff those out right at the beginning and make sure that there's no grounds that they're moving forward with, you can show you have everything buttoned up and dialed in, and every dollar and penny in is accounted for as a penny out. Helps you tremendously to get into those sticky situations. But with that, team, I would love to thank you all for joining us today. If you had to jump, if you joined late, anything like that, no problem. The recording will be shared afterwards along with a number of resources. And I can't thank you all enough for joining us here today for another TipHaus Insider.